Hi, my name's Troy. I'm an alcoholic. I could not be more nervous today. I have qualified before and was not near as nervous and spent all up until this morning cocky and confident that I was going to do great and bring nothing but solution and save you all, because that's what I like to do. And then this morning realized that that's not me. That's not why I'm here. I would say that the reasons I'm nervous are very different than they were before. Before I would have been nervous about what you thought of me, if I was doing it right, or if I was going to screw it up. And this morning, the nervousness was realizing what a great responsibility this is, which is also part of my Al-Anon right there. But I wanted so much to come in here and say something that would show people the miracles that have happened in my life, because they're so hard to put into words. And I also had to realize this morning that that's also not my job. That I don't know what anyone in here needs to hear. That's all God. He knows what needs to be heard, and he'll use parts of my story to hopefully get that to whoever needs to hear it. So that makes me feel a little bit more comfortable, whether or not I'm still shaking. I'll start with what it was like. Growing up, I seemed pretty happy as a kid, and somewhere around third grade, I realized just how unhappy I was. I grew up to an alcoholic mother who was in the program, and I was raised a lot by recovery and people in recovery. My mom was told to move in with someone she didn't know, and she moved in with that person with a newborn baby, and that person was a nurse and kind of helped her be a mother, which she didn't know how to do. My grandparents also helped a lot with raising me, and I felt really loved and supported. We moved around a lot. I went to a different school every year of my life. When I was 3, we moved to El Paso for other family, and we were just kind of all over, and it never really seemed odd to me until I got much older and was just like, what do you mean you've lived in the same house your whole life? I don't get it. It makes no sense to me. But my mom met someone in the program, and they eventually got married, and I remember my mom asked me, I was like 5 years old, this man had asked her to marry her, and she asked me if it was okay, and I remember thinking to myself, anything that would make my mom happy, that's all that mattered to me, was that she was happy and that she was okay. And then through the rest of that marriage, which lasted 7 years and included various forms of abuse, which I also refused to look at for a long time, because the fact that I wasn't being beaten every day to me meant that I wasn't being abused. But every day I held myself responsible because I allowed it to happen. I told her that she could marry him, and I chose that that was my fault, and anything that happened in that house was my fault, and anything that was wrong in the world was also my fault. And I think it was about third grade when I started praying to God every single day that I wouldn't wake up the next day, because I was clearly making everyone's lives around me miserable. And that's a really hard place to be in for a third grader, and you don't make a whole lot of friends that way. I was always personable. They used to call me, I was a ham when I was a kid. I could make people laugh and really put up this front that everything was okay, and didn't really realize that that wasn't serving me. And eventually that stopped being able to happen. I think it was around middle school or high school that I couldn't hide whatever it was I was feeling anymore. And I didn't even have words for it until I came into this program, and that was incomprehensible demoralization on an all-day, everyday basis. And all I knew was that something was wrong and that I didn't have the words for it. I knew that I was constantly asking to see the school therapist, and when they asked me what was going on, I had nothing to give them. I didn't know what to say. I knew that something was wrong, and I didn't know what it was, and I felt so responsible for not being able to put words to it, and said that I can't get the help I need if I don't even know what I need to be asking for, and that was a really isolating place to be. And it still can be at times, but luckily I have a solution for that. We'll kind of move through. I was a bit of a goody-goody because, of course, I want to show you how great I am. So I was the most perfect child I thought I could be. I really struggled in school. Later to find out that I had some issues with learning and focus that could be trauma related. Who knows? It doesn't really matter. I know that I had struggles in school, and if you gave me a rubric for an assignment, I was going to double that so that I could get 200%. And after 3 nights of being up trying to get that 200% on that project, if it wasn't to my liking, even if it was an A, I wouldn't turn it in at all, because taking a 0 was much easier than showing you that I wasn't as perfect as I wanted to be. I in 8th grade, was a quote-unquote Jesus freak, as I was called. I tried church. I tried it really hard. I gave them all of my money, and for a long time regretted that, but it actually started what was a really awesome thing. We were raising money for a church. I decided to give them my whole savings, and because of that, the rest of the fellowship was inspired to do major contributions as well, because we had been falling behind on fundraising, and then shortly thereafter, I had the first time that I was saved, apparently. I don't know, that was weird. Don't know how to put that into words. Don't even know why I'm saying it. Still very nervous, so I'm gonna take a deep breath. I got into high school. I came out as gay. The summer between 8th grade and 9th grade, knowing that I was going to go to a different high school than everyone else, and I just kindly, very gently changed my orientation on MySpace and let other people find it when they wanted to. I also sent my mom a 4-page email, which she didn't get for weeks. Little did I know. So I thought that she just wasn't talking to me about it for a really long time. And that was really awkward. She then finally came in and told me that she would love me no matter what, and that she had no issue with it, which were all things that I knew ahead of time. But when I sent that email, it was nothing but shame about how I had let my family down in one other way, that I had made my life harder for myself, and that they didn't want that for me. And also I realized later that I didn't even really know if I was gay yet. I had just come to the conclusion that, like, oh, there were people that I had found attractive in my history that just so happened to be of the same gender. And you know, I like picking out curtains, and I can make a room look real pretty. And I had been in theater for a really long time, and even though I switched to tech theater, which was my butch side, I was clearly gay. I got to later find out that maybe that wasn't my truth. I never really processed it. I just kind of went with whatever box seemed to fit whatever people thought of me. That was the easiest thing. Whatever you told me I was that. And I really don't know who I am. I'm still working on that, and that's really awesome to have a program to get to do that. I didn't realize until sobriety that memory came back of in kindergarten being made fun of for my favorite color being red, and from that point on it was blue. And I didn't remember anything other than that for my entire life. And in sobriety, little short miracle there, I got to go get some glasses that didn't show you the side that I wanted you to see, but I got to show my little funky side, and I got inspired by certain people in this specific room to just kind of be a little weird and be like, I want red glasses, and I don't care if you think it's professional. Whew, we're still all over the place today. Okay. I was 15 when I picked up my first drink. I had my first cigarette first after years of telling my mom that cigarettes were going to kill her and she shouldn't do it. Gave her a lot of grief for that. Later on that year, she found marijuana, crushed up pills, and cigarettes in my bag. She didn't care about the marijuana or the crushed up pills. She just couldn't believe that I was smoking after all the years of grief I gave to her for it. I do want to backtrack a little bit. Something that kind of came up in my inventory was that when I was 2 years old, my great-grandfather successfully committed suicide, and I am in a family that has a lot of mental health disorders and issues with depression and a whole lot of alcoholism, both treated and untreated. And I was 100% sure my entire life that if I wasn't perfect, my family was going to kill themselves, and that if they killed themselves, I wouldn't be able to support myself because I was 5. And I still carry that around a lot. And I know that that has more to do with my Al-Anon side or ACA side, but it had a big reason that when I picked up that first drink, I needed it so long ahead of time because I had the entire weight of the world on my shoulders, and I can now see that I put it there, but that didn't make that weight any less at that time. I was responsible for anything and everything around me at any and all times, and I was terrified to mess any of it up. And so I took that first drink, and I remember I had made a conscious decision beforehand. My mom had recently relapsed, and I didn't really understand why. And I knew that all these things were bad, but I didn't know why. And I decided that when I had kids and I raised them right, because that's what I was going to do, that I wanted to give them information. I wanted them to know why it was wrong. And I went into my addiction and alcoholism with the guise of control. I was going in it to research. I wanted to know how it made me feel, what the consequences could be, how it might be different for people with mental health disorders. And I wanted to give my children all of the information they needed to make the decision on their own as to what was right or wrong. Mind you, I still don't have children, just to put that out there. But I went into alcoholism feeling responsible. I had a responsible need to understand what this was, how it worked, and why it wasn't working. And I found out all those things. So the fact that I drank and used for so long, God answered that prayer for me, and he said, "You want to know the reason? I'll give you all the reasons," and he did. And I am really grateful for that. And if you can't see the miracle in that yet, stick around and you definitely will. Because I wanted to understand why after years of not drinking my entire life, that in high school my mom would choose to drink again. I wanted to understand why she had overdosed and couldn't take me to work because I couldn't wake her up. And I also wanted to understand why it is that instead of calling 911 to find out if my mom had died, that I called my grandparents to see if we could fix it first, because I didn't want to get her in trouble. And so I picked up that first drink and I could breathe for the first time in what felt like ever. And for the first time, I didn't care about not caring, because any other time that I didn't care about something, I felt guilty for that, and I felt like I should be managing. And I drank way more than that first drink. I remember my very first drink was a screwdriver. Just so you know, if you haven't found out already, orange juice in reverse coming out of your nose is not fun. And I did it again the next day. I drank a lot of vodka and orange juice, and then I started mixing with a whole lot of other things, and I was smoking cigarettes and sneaking out, and I had gone from the person before, just a year before, that was the Jesus freak, telling friends that I really cared about that I didn't think marijuana was a good thing for them, and that we could hang out and do something else instead, but maybe drinking and partying wasn't for them, and now all I wanted to do was run away because I finally figured out that I could. I didn't know that I could. See, I always thought, I always wanted to run away from home. I always had that dream. I had a great grandmother that lived down the street from me, and I never had the balls to do it. And that drink gave me the balls to just not give a fuck about what anyone cared about anymore. And it felt like freedom. And at that point in my journey, it was a freedom. It was a freedom that I didn't know how to access on my own. And I had found something that helped me access that freedom. And I found as much of it as I could. Anywhere that I could. I was the person that I had a very high work ethic. I was perfect at my job. In fact, the fact that I was working 2 jobs, school was getting in the way of it. So I dropped out my sophomore year and continued working those 2 jobs, but I was also the person that when my mom told me that she was going to go out of town with the rest of the family for the weekend, which was a common thing, her boyfriend and my brother and sister, the family, not including me, I would immediately find that as an excuse to call up my friends, say, "Tell me when you're at the back door of my work," and tell all the friends to meet me there. And I would trash that house. I would clean it before they got home, but I would trash that house and I'd walk out in the middle of my shift to do so. Shortly after, my mom and my two younger half-siblings and her boyfriend, who she also met in the program because she came back to the program to get another husband and then not go to meetings anymore, which is what she does. That's not me doing her inventory. That's me realizing that what I thought was sobriety for a really long time was dry alcoholism, I'm not speaking for my mom. I know for me, as someone who has spent moments, long periods of time dry, that me dry is way worse than me drunk for me and for all of you. And I didn't realize that all of those years that I thought my mom had been sober, she in fact didn't have the solutions that I wanted her to have, and she wasn't able to teach them to me, and I really hated her for that for a long time, and I can now see that I've been using that as an excuse as an adult to not be an adult, and now I have all of the resources to be able to learn how to do those things that I wasn't taught how to do, and I get to do those with the people in these rooms and people outside of these rooms. I get to learn things that weren't taught to me, and I can't hold her responsible for the fact that I'm a 30-year-old man that doesn't know how to do certain things, because her responsibility to teach me those things ended a really long time ago. She and her boyfriend and the kids moved away. I was living in their foreclosed-on abandoned house with my cat. Things got crazy. I don't know how to put words to it. I'm going to speed up the process here because I'm still not sober yet. Anyways, there's a lot of drinking. There's a lot of moving around. I met someone that was the love of my life in 2015. I had been working at the bars for a really long time. About a month before that, I had gotten really sick. As someone who has never gotten really sick, I was 100% sure it was HIV, and all of the doctors told me that it wasn't. And then 2 months after that, 2 months into this relationship, he and I go get tested together. As someone who has had the sexual experiences that I've had, every single time that I've gotten tested, I was 100% sure that I had it. This is the only time that I went to get tested and was 100% sure that I didn't. And then with my hopeful one-day husband in the other room, I found out that I had HIV, and I could not handle it. That was my breaking point. As someone who had grown up their entire lives knowing that they were unmanageable, in fact, the first time in this program, I held on to that part of step one for a really long time. My life hadn't become unmanageable. I had been unmanageable as long as I had ever known. And I couldn't relate that to alcohol, because alcohol is what made me feel better about the unmanageability, and that step seemed so backwards to me. But now I had something that I had to manage. I knew that it wasn't going to kill me. I knew that there were life-saving medications out there, but I knew that it was something that I would have to show up for, and showing up is something that I've never known how to do. And that really scared me. I tried with doctor's appointments and a whole bunch of stuff, and I couldn't figure it out, and I was scared and I was terrified, and I decided that I was going to start planning my death instead, because that was the easier thing to do. And I started looking into funeral arrangements and figuring out how I could get life insurance and how I could make sure that I could make as much money as humanly possible to give to my brother and sister, who are most likely eventually going to inherit my mother's debt, because that's all I wanted. That's all I wanted. I also realized that I had been so busy living and just trying to survive that I had quit on all of my dreams, and that I was going to pack up everything I owned and move to New York just to say that I had done it before I died, because that's all I had wanted to do. One of the first full sentences out of my mouth as a kid was, "Bye, Mom, I'm off to work in New York." And I had forgotten about that. I got so busy with life, so I spent a year packing up all my stuff, looking for jobs, things like that, and I went out there, and then I was there alone with myself, and I told that person that was trying to console me, that was trying to love me, that I didn't know how to be loved, that I wanted to go through this alone. I didn't want them anywhere near me, and that I didn't want to ruin their lives like I had ruined my own. And I went off to New York, and I was there. I was there. Like, I went with me, and that was really weird, because here I was, like, there was nothing left. I had done all I wanted to do. I made all my arrangements. I was still trying to make money, not managing that very well. I still had HIV, couldn't manage that very well. I was in New York, cool, did that, and now I was just kind of waiting to die and really resenting the fact that it didn't. I'm not taking meds. Why the fuck am I still here? Why am I still trying to find jobs? I can't do this. I drank a lot, I drank heavily, and I wanted to kill myself all day, every day, and started letting my friends know that, letting my family know that, and I was terrified, and and now more so alone. And at one point, my mom, who I had told that I wanted to kill myself too, which is something you really shouldn't tell your mother, but I had no other options, she suggested that I go to AA, which made no sense to me because I said I was suicidal, not that I had a drinking problem. But I went anyway. I stayed in AA a little over a year, I think. I'm not really sure of that timeline. I know when I came back into this program, I said that I had been sober for 2 years. To be honest, I know that I picked up a 1-year chip. I don't really know. It was all really blurry. I know that I read the steps a million times. I read how it works a million times, and I was not ready to hear any of it. I know that I did not realize it was a spiritual program. I didn't work the program. I thought that I had sponsors. Still not really sure what happens there. I'm sure more clarity will come. But I was absolutely miserable, losing my fucking shit and forcing all of you to help me manage my life, which you did. and I got on meds and I got mental health care and all this stuff, and it all came together, but I still wanted to die every fucking day, and I couldn't figure it out. I finally gave up on the dream that was New York because I wasn't making enough money. I couldn't keep a job. I was miserable, wanted to kill myself, and had no other options but to come crawling back home or to Dallas. And so I came back to Dallas and quickly got my job back at the bars, and realized that because of those, that more than a year dry, you guys had stolen my tolerance, and I was really mad because I had spent a lot of time building up that tolerance. So I couldn't drink like I used to, but I wanted to drink like I used to, so I went and picked up some outside issues and put those up my nose as much as I could. Eventually I quit drinking and realized that this made me superhuman, which is all I ever wanted, and I started doing those outside issues on their own without drinking. It was no longer to be fun, but it was instead to lock myself in a closet and do as much research online as I could on how to fix myself and coping mechanisms and how to fix family dynamics, and to self-diagnose myself and figure out all these things that I didn't know how to do. How to get a therapist, and what I should be, what I should do, how to fix the world. And as I'm out there trying to fix the world, we get blessed with our own little pandemic, which is one more thing that I now have to fix. And that's exhausting. Fucking exhausting. Y'all really wear me out with the shit you put me through. So things got really scary really quick, and I figured out that I was going to go back to school for the 4th time, because, the other 3 times I dropped out, this time was going to be different, and I was going to do software development because I was good at it and organized, and I could save the world. And I was just breaking down every day as I was driving for Uber, and just like watching businesses with I remember one time I was driving by the Starbucks on McKinney and saw that their furniture was up and there were no cars on the street, and I had a full complete panic attack, could not breathe, and parked my car in the middle of the road, which didn't matter because no one was on it, and just could not breathe. There was violence in the streets and race riots, and I was terrified, and I had people texting me just, hey, are you okay? I know you're in Dallas. I see the city's burning, and I couldn't deal with it. I was someone who had always watched the news so that I could figure out what you needed me to fix for you, and then would do my research on how to fix that, and I stopped watching the news. I locked myself in that closet. I turned off everything, turned off my phone, and just couldn't do it anymore. And I also knew that I had gotten to a point where putting down cocaine meant that I would have to be sober and suicidal, which scared me. More so than now, which was being high and suicidal, which was new to me, because I couldn't get away from it anymore, and that really scared me. And for a long time in this program, I didn't understand what you guys meant by it stopped working. It didn't make sense to me. You drank all that booze and you didn't get drunk. It stopped relieving me. For me, I don't know if you kept drinking booze and it stopped getting you drunk. I know that it was still getting me high, but it didn't fix anything that it used to fix. I no longer felt superhuman. I could no longer get away from wanting to kill myself, and I could finally see that I couldn't do anything, and that was horrible. I had made myself more alone than you could imagine. I could go months without receiving a text message from anyone, including family, and I would lock myself in a closet of a house that I lived in completely alone, and I was perfectly okay with living like that. My sexual adventures where I didn't want to be treated like a human. I didn't want to see you as a human. I just wanted to get in, get out, and just have some form of hope of not feeling for just a short moment. And I accepted that for myself, and I wanted that for myself. And if you asked me how my day was going, I hated the fact that you wanted to treat me like a human because I didn't see myself like one anymore. I'm going to try and get sober now, like I said I would 10 minutes ago. December 16th of last year, I had just had a really bad outing with a toxic ex-boyfriend. I sat on the top floor of the owner's suite at the Virgin Hotel, looking over the balcony, wondering if I was going to jump, and holding on to the chair of that balcony, chain smoking and doing cocaine, hoping to God that I wouldn't do it, but not sure if I'd be able to stop myself. And that was really scary. The next morning, we went back to my house, and I finally asked for help for the first time in a clear way that people understood, because I'm really good at dropping hints and then getting mad when you don't pick them up. But I told him that I needed help, that I was suicidal, that I didn't think that I could make it another day without killing myself, and that I couldn't stop using it. It really scared me. And he told me that there was nothing he could do, and that he didn't really do emotions well. So he left, and I finished the rest of the blow that I stole from him. Not the rest of it, I take that back. I finished most of it. I went to a meeting at Preston Group, I believe it was that first meeting. I then went back home, did some more of that, and was freaking out. I wasn't sure how I was going to make it to the next meeting because the first time I got sober was in New York, and there's a meeting every hour of every day, and you wanted me to wait from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. for another meeting, and that was fucking crazy. And I hated all of you for that. And but it's okay because I was going to get sober and I was going to fix Dallas AA on it. I went to the 11 o'clock Lambda meeting, and I left there and said that I need to finish whatever I have at home because you guys are going to make me flush it, and I'm not going to waste money like that. That's stupid. So I went home and I did that, and by some grace, was able to eventually pass out and wake up just in time to make it to the next 11 o'clock Lambda meeting where someone asked me for my number, and I gave it to them begrudgingly. They invited me to fellowship, and I told them, thank you, no. Probably not so nicely. That same person asked me 3 days in a row if I'd go to fellowship, and the third day I was hauling ass down that aisle up at this church here, and he was like, I'm going to chase you down if that's what it takes every time. And I said, I guess I'll have to start leaving before the serenity prayer. And I say that not to be funny. I say that to say that I came in here not wanting help, not knowing how to receive love. And I was terrified of all of you. And I was not ready to put my walls down yet, but I was ready to come into this room. And that's all I was ready to do. And at that time, that was enough. At the time, that was enough to sit in that chair, in that pew, and hold on for dear fucking life, crying the entire time, not hearing a single thing that you were saying, and then running out as soon as I could to sit at home and hold on for dear life until the next meeting. And for that moment, that was enough, and that's all I could do, and that's all that was being asked of me, was to go there, cry while they read How It Works, convince yourself that you are constitutionally incapable of being honest with yourself, and then come back tomorrow. And I did that, and eventually I started opening up more. I'm going to speed up a little bit more here because I want to give all the details. I can't put into words what a miracle this past year has been, but another really big thing happened on January 24th, because if you'll notice, December 16th is not my sobriety date, but on January 22nd, actually it was. I had gone to fellowship with people. They asked me at the end of that fellowship if I was okay, and I said that I was because I thought that I was. They could see that I wasn't, but I couldn't. Earlier in that day, I had taken out cash from the ATM, and it was kind of habitual. I didn't know why, didn't know anything. I had cleaned my apartment. Little did I know that my addiction had prepared the entire day to leave that fellowship playing cards with friends, go home, call my dealer and ask him to make a delivery and that I could sleep with him. And that's why I had cleaned my apartment and taken out cash for no fucking reason before. And I did those things, and I didn't even realize I was doing it until I was in the middle of my using, and I specifically remember a moment of clarity while high that I looked down and said, I don't remember any of this happening. I have no idea how I got here. Last I knew, I was playing cards with friends in the program, and here I am on my couch with my dealer in this bag, and I'm so fucked. I'm so fucked, and I'm never going to make it back there again. And that was such a blessing, because something that I didn't realize was a reservation is I'd always known that I had no control over the second drink or the third drink or anything after that, but I always thought that as long as I didn't pick up, I'd be fine. And I finally realized that I didn't have control over that first one either, and I was going to need something much bigger. And that was really fucking scary to me. And I am so blessed to have that, because that's the only reason that I'm working this program like I am now, because at that time I was doing step work with my sponsor. I had met with him earlier that day. I was doing everything that I thought that I could, and I was just trying to stay away from that first drink, but I was still doing it. I was still doing it. I had no higher power there. I was trying to figure out what that was, but I didn't have a higher power yet to keep me from that first use. And I needed that lesson to see that I couldn't keep myself away from that first, and that I needed to do something different, and I needed to do it quickly. I had a friend that was reaching out later on that night, and I, of course, wasn't answering my door or answering my text messages. And after a while, they texted me and they said, "I just want you to know that whether you're using or not using, sad, alone, whatever, that someone does give a fuck about you." And I wasn't ready to be loved, so I put my phone on airplane mode and I finished my using, and I woke up the next day and said, I can never go back there again. So that friend knocked on my door the next day. And I ignored that knock because I was too ashamed. And then the following day, that knocked on that door again. And I wasn't planning on opening it, but I did want to look through the people, and they were standing there with two other friends and my sponsor. And I realized that you guys weren't bullshitting, that you loved me even though I was not lovable in my own eyes. And I didn't understand why, but I couldn't leave you out there, so I let those friends in, and I let them see the mess that had become my apartment in just the past 24 hours. Bags everywhere, art projects, because I endlessly tinker with projects accomplishing nothing and find myself too busy to get to work on time. If you know, you know. We discussed, and they allowed me to be a part of that discussion of what the next steps were to be, and they didn't let me be alone. They let me sleep on their couches instead of sleeping alone in that apartment. And the next day we started packing up my entire life and putting it in a storage and figuring out how to get me into a rehab, which also denied me because I had unmanaged HIV. I had 2 rehabs and 1 psych ward deny me because I wasn't taking care of myself, that they wouldn't let me in. And here I was screaming that I'm trying to get help. But I got what I needed. See, those weren't the places that God needed me at that time, and I can see that now. But at the time, I was still feeling like a victim. But I still had people that helped me manage my life because I really wasn't ready to see things yet. And that's a big thing here. I remember sharing with my sponsor that constitutionally incapable of being honest with myself, I was 100% certain that that was me, so that this program wasn't for me. And he let me know that with God, I could get more honest over time. I would continue to get more honest and see more clarity. And that if honesty wasn't something that I had, it's something that I could also get from a power greater than myself. And that was the most freeing thing that I had ever heard in my life, because I knew that I didn't know what reality was. I had lost complete touch of reality at a very young age, and I didn't know what that was anymore. That sponsor and I continued to work steps, and those friends continued to support me through months. I've been to multiple Oxford houses, and I got kicked out of them for personality issues because I am a tough personality. Let's be real, I could say that they don't like me or that it's for one reason or another, but honestly, I'm a tough person to put up with, and I want to tell you exactly how you're going to do things, and I want to manage your life for you, and I want to manage your program for you, and I want to tell you exactly how many meetings you should be going to and what your experience with the second step should be or the third step should be and how many times you should be calling your sponsor. And it comes from a place of love. I want you to have what I have been so freely given by the people in my life, but I've also had to learn to not get in the way of other people's journey, but to instead support them through that. And I'm starting to learn that, and I'm still not perfect at it at all. But I will say that I've received a lot of miracles in this program. I have acted in ways that do not make sense to me. I have sat down and done step work and had a power greater than myself take over a pen and look down and read words back to myself that I don't remember writing. And that's where my clarity comes from. I got to sit down in my second step with my 4th sponsor, and I got to write a letter to God and write a letter back to myself. And there were things in that letter back that I hadn't written those. And there have been many a times where I have shared in a meeting. I know that most people in this room have seen me cry and hold onto my chair for dear fucking life. And almost every time I shared after, I just got more honest than I wanted to. And that's true. It's more honest than I wanted to, because I let my higher power take over. And that's a really awesome thing that I get to do. I get to be honest even when I don't want to be. I get to do things when I'm scared. I still argue things a lot. I didn't realize how much I wasn't doing in my program. How many suggestions I wasn't taking. I honestly, and was screaming at you all the time, I'm doing everything you're telling me to do. I'm doing it. I'm arguing it, but I'm doing it. And I've been able to realize that I'm not. And that allows me to grow. I no longer have to use that as a weapon to beat myself up over. I have no idea what time it is, so if someone wants to give me, am I at time? Oh boy, Jesus. Okay. This past year, I've experienced so many miracles that I can't put into words. And I do want to point out that a lot of these miracles present themselves in materialistic ways, and they're not at all materialistic. And sometimes I've worked for them, and sometimes they've just come when I've needed them to. And that's when things are really most weird for me. I try really hard with prayer and meditation. Those are some of the most important parts of my program. I've not yet completed all steps, but I still do that every day. Every day that I remember to, and sometimes I remember to, and I'm not willing to do it. And I'm honest about that. I know that my willingness is also something that doesn't have to come from me. I pray for it every day. God, make me willing to be willing, to be willing, to be willing. Just make me a little bit more than I am today. Because I'm not always willing, and sometimes I make a conscious decision not to do that thing that I should do, or I see that I haven't done it and then don't do it then. Oh, I didn't pray this morning, fuck. Well, I can pray right now, idiot. Keep it simple, right? I will say that I've struggled a lot with doing this step work. I've struggled a lot with taking suggestions. I've struggled a lot with personalities, and I've struggled a lot with seeing what I think other people should be. And I still show up. And sometimes that's all I can do. And when I can do more, I try to. Someone told me in a meeting once, they were going through something hard, and they were actually sharing something that had been shared with them at that time. And they said, when you're scared, just do it scared. And I apply that in a lot of different ways. I do it whether I'm scared or whether I'm confused. I do it uncertain, because I was the person that used to walk around and say that I needed to know how it worked before I was going to do it. I wasn't just going to push the button and make toast. I wanted to pull the toaster apart and understand that it was going to work, because I wasn't going to trust it then. And that's one of the great paradoxes of this program, is that I don't have to have faith to do those things, that I get the faith from doing the things I don't believe are going to work, which for a long time I did just to prove you all wrong. I did these steps at you guys for most of my program. At least the first 6 months of my program, I did what you said just to prove that it wasn't going to work. You were all stupid. And some days, that's still, I have to finish all 12, because if they say that, oh, well, you went out in 8 and the miracle's in 12, like, fuck that. So I still do it at you to a certain extent, not as much anymore. I do it because I've seen the freedoms and the faith and the hope and the love that comes from this program, and the person that it turns me into, which is not the person that I've been my entire life. But I still do it at you guys sometimes, and sometimes that motive is okay, and it's just enough at that time. I can use my character defects to motivate me to do something better. So I show up and I do service commitments when I don't want to, as best as I can, and I just do my best, which I have to remind myself is enough. I do want to share on a couple different things. One thing I've noticed is that there's been times in this program where every single one of the promises that is mentioned in the 9th step promises, which by the way are not the only promises in this book, I've had days where every single one of those promises has been true and full in my life and in abundance. And the way I like to look at that is that if any day I'm not seeing all of those promises, it doesn't mean that they're not there. It means that I'm looking somewhere else. And I try to really remind myself of that. I do my best to to work this program, not to keep me from drugs and alcohol, because that was the small part that got me in here. But because it's a spiritual program, I get to have so much more than that. I no longer have the obsession to drink and use, and the thoughts have come about here and there. But the way I like to see my responsibility, someone had told me in a meeting once that their relationship to the first step really changed when they realized that powerless was not a negative term, but a positive one. And that changed my sobriety at 11 months. It changed everything. And I realized that powerless was just the humility to see what I am and am not responsible for. And then the things that I'm not responsible for, I give them to my higher power. And that's really unclear to me sometimes. But the amount of things that I came in here feeling responsible for at the beginning of this program, now anything that I can say that's not mine to is a freedom that I couldn't have even imagined, because I didn't come in here wanting anything other than freedom from my addiction. And I've gotten so much more than that. It's funny, someone told me right before I came in here, if there's something that comes up that I should say and I don't want to, I should say it. And it just popped up right now because there's something I'm kind of avoiding saying. So I'm going to share a little bit about my past week, which I haven't really wanted to do. But this past week was one of the hardest weeks of my entire life. I got to experience things that I decided at a very young age that I would never be able to get through alive, let alone sober. And now I'm going to get less vague. Last Thursday, I got a call that my grandmother probably had hours or days to live. This is a grandmother that my mom hadn't spoken to in 15 years, that I have had my own issues with, and that I hadn't talked to since New Year's when we had a disagreement. And we've had a lot of issues over the time, and that time was running out. And here I am just trying to finish my fucking 8th step so I can get that off my chest. But it was the second grandparent that I'd be losing in sobriety. This is also the grandmother that I credit to most of the things that are good about me, and that helped raise me. And I was conflicted as to whether or not I should go out there, because I was told by my family, who is also controlling and manipulative just like me, that I shouldn't go out there. There wouldn't be enough time, and that it wouldn't do anything. And I got to lose my shit with my sponsor for a little bit and see what my motives were. Eventually I realized that going out there was the right thing to do, but I needed to know why it was the right thing to do. I needed to know that it was the right thing in my heart and not in my head, because I was sitting there with all of the pros and cons list and how can I be of service and what can I do here? And am I being motivated by guilt or trying to make up for years of being the child that they didn't think that I'd grow up to be? Why was I going out there? And I got to sit with my sponsor and sit with God and really think about that, on whether or not I'd be able to go out there. And then I was able to 2 days later get on that plane through the help of someone in this program who knew that I'm struggling with my finances right now and really trying to be more financially responsible and not lean on other people to help me out paying my bills when I've spent my money irresponsibly. And that person offered some miles to get me on a flight and stayed on the phone with me to figure out how to get me out there. And I immediately, something that wasn't me, that was my higher power, I immediately called people that I knew on a Zoom meeting out in Vegas where I was going and said that I'm going to need people out there. And I don't know what I'm going to need you for, but I need people out there. And I asked for help. I don't do that. And I asked for help without knowing what the help I needed was. I didn't have to figure it out first, and that was also really weird. And that person helped me get flights out there, and I immediately started making arrangements to make up for commitments and appointments that I had made throughout the week, and made sure that everything that I said that I would show up for was shown up for, whether or not I could be there for it. And I prayed the entire way for the rest of that 12 hours between booking my flight and actually going. Spent the entire time asking God that my grandma be able to find serenity and freedom and peace that she hadn't had in so long, and that if she needed to go before I got there to experience that to help me find acceptance with that, which is also not something that I would pray for. See, my higher power had also taken over my prayers. He took over what it was I was asking for, because I wasn't asking for myself. I just wanted her to be okay. I didn't want to go make my amends in time. I didn't want to go make up for everything. I just wanted her to be okay. And I wanted my family to be okay. And if I was able to go show up for my family and offer the same love, compassion, and care that has been freely offered to me for this past year to them when they are also suffering, then that in itself would be a blessing. So if I got there and she wasn't there, then I was still able to be of service and I still had a purpose to be there. And I got there and she was still there. And we held on for a very long time. It was a very confusing time. She was in a state of care where we were no longer trying to fix issues, but trying to avoid her having to be in a vegetative state for an extended period of time, and we were essentially waiting for my grandmother to starve to death and making her as comfortable enough as possible in doing so. And I sat there with my aunt and my grandfather and my grandmother for, I believe it was 6 days, and I held her hand, and I sang to her, and I took ownership for some of the things I had done and made some apologies. And I consoled my grandfather and I consoled my aunt. And then another big miracle happened. I, not knowing how to control my mom, who wanted to fly out there and be of assistance after 15 years of not talking to anyone in that family, wasn't sure what answer I was supposed to give her because she asked me for an answer and I felt responsible to give her one. And after talking to people in this program and praying a whole fuck lot, something came out of my mouth during that conversation which shocked me. And I said, I can't tell you what's right for you to do. You need to do what's in your heart. And then I told her my own struggle with knowing what was right to do and what was my head and what was my heart and how I found out what my heart was by using the tools of this program. And I let her come to that answer on her own. And I was willing to accept that regardless of what happened, if she were to come out there and add pain to that situation, that I, because of the people in this program, would be able to offer the support, love, comfort, and understanding to everyone in that situation, no matter what, and that I would be willing to take on that much. And that was really weird to me, because for the first time, I let my mom be responsible for her own actions. For the first time in 31 years, I let my mom be responsible for her own actions, and I also let my family know that I was not responsible for her actions, and that I wasn't going to tell my mom not to show up, and that if she did, that was of her own, and that I hadn't told her to come, but I wasn't going to tell her not to. I got to be there for my family in ways that just didn't make sense to me, and then throughout the time, I got to reach out to other people in this program and say, I'm not okay. I also got to reach out to other people and ask them how their days were going. Asked them what I could do for them. I got to sit down and pray with someone for 30 minutes about being relieved of their thoughts of what a higher power was, because they were really struggling with step 2, and I got to get out of my mind for 30 minutes and be with that person and hopefully help them relieve themselves of what's removing them from God. And that is a blessing. I got to get out of myself every day and call a friend and ask how they were doing, because I told them that I would no matter what. I told them that if you feel like you are struggling, no matter what, I will call you at this time every day, and if I can't, I will let you know when I can call you, because this 30 minutes is about you. This time is about you, and it's not about me. And then when that person asked how I was doing, I got to tell them that I'm doing okay, and I'm talking to people I need to about my things, but this is about you. And I got to call other people who knew what was going on and say, I just want to know what's going on in your life right now. I got to make it about other people. I got to make what I had decided a long time ago was going to be the most painful experience of my life that I wasn't going to be able to go through. It wasn't all about me. And parts of it were about me, and I got to ask for help with that, and I got to ask for forgiveness, and I got to see people in this program bury their own loved ones throughout this past year, and I got to see them do so with dignity and grace, and I got to see that example, and then I got to ask them when I felt like I was not doing it with dignity and grace. I got to call them and ask them, how did you do it? Because I can't do it right now. And they assured me that I could, and I got to stand up and continue doing that. Another little miracle, and again, I hope these don't come off as material, because it's really just how I felt and how I feel now, and how I can manage to handle situations which used to baffle me. Thank you, time. I will say that I got off a plane that landed 40 minutes early in time to get to a meeting that I wasn't going to be able to get to. I hauled ass to that meeting, and on the way to that meeting found out that my grandmother passed on that flight and got to have a friend hold my hand and hold me in that meeting that I wasn't supposed to be at. And then when called on, because I wasn't sure if I should share about myself or share about solution or share it all or just sit down and shut the fuck up, I was called on in that meeting. And when I was called on, I knew that I should share on the miracle that had just happened in my life so that anyone in that room that didn't know that miracles were possible might hear it today. And I want to do the same thing and say that I have seen things that could not come true in this past year. And if you are 2 days sober, 2 months sober, or 2 decades sober, if you are not experiencing miracles, they are out there for you to experience. And I really look to find the people that are feeling the way I want to feel, not the people that have what I want to have, but that have that relief that I want to have. Those people are experiencing miracles, and I want their miracles. I don't want their cars. I want their fucking miracles, and you people have them, and I thank you for sharing them with me.